The time is now 6 o'clock, and the Tuesday, March 12, 2024 Kingsport City Schools Board of Education regular meeting is called to order, and I am delighted to turn it over to Dr. True for the highlight of the evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Woods. And it is always a pleasure to welcome our guests to our meetings, but especially tonight, two very special guests coming to us, two of Jackson's finest. We have Ami and Ollie Sonpon. They're going to come on up with me, and we're going to talk a little bit before we do the pledge. We were having a great conversation earlier. I was asking them what the world would want to know about them as we introduce you to the world on the internet and in our meeting here tonight. And the things that Ms. Seymour was talking about, and as we were talking, they were saying things like helpful and kind, and I thought it was really special that you all, the descriptions of you was about your helpfulness and your kindness to each other, and that was reflective in our conversation. So first of all, helpful and kind, but also what are some of the other things we were talking about? You're getting ready to have spring break of your 5th grade year. What has it been like being kind of the top of the heap at Jackson this year? And you've got some exciting news about next year you were telling me about. Do you want to tell them about that?
I'm a cheerleader at John Sevier.
So she made cheerleader at John Sevier. So that will be a great way that you can kind of phase into middle school. What are you looking most forward to of middle school, do you think?
Probably making more friends.
It is kind of cool when you get kind of a broader, you have your school, but then to meet friends from other schools. Ollie, you've got a pretty big night coming up tonight, don't you? When you're leaving here, you were saying you were going somewhere special tonight? Did you have to get to?
Softball?
Softball? So is that something you've done for a long time?
Yeah, and then I stopped.
You stopped? So you're getting back to, what position do you play or do you like to play?
Catcher.
Catcher, very good, right in the middle of all the action. Well, we're very pleased. It was a pleasure to meet you and pleased that you're here to lead the pledge this evening. If everyone, if you would, please rise. And ladies, the flag is right over here. It's got height there, whenever you're ready.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great softball season, and we'll look forward to seeing you cheering on the Warriors next year for John Sevier. They're lucky to have you, so thank you so much for being here. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to accept the agenda, which includes the consent agenda. One correction to the agenda is agenda item 4.4. That will be for the purchase of 1 bus instead of 3 buses, and that will be discussed by Mr. Fry a little bit later. Once the agenda is accepted, the board mutually agrees not to discuss any item of business or take any action that has not been accepted for the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then we'll move on. Okay. This is a time when members of the audience are invited to comment on agenda items. It's not the time to speak about personnel issues, as there are more appropriate ways in which these can be addressed. If you're not sure how to do this, please ask one of us after the meeting. In your remarks, you may not refer to students by name without permission from the parent or guardian. If you would like to speak on a topic not included on the agenda, you are asked to submit your request in writing to the superintendent of schools at least 3 business days prior to the scheduled date of the meeting. Now, if you would like to speak about an item included on tonight's agenda, please raise your hand. I request that you state your name and limit your remarks to a maximum of 3 minutes. And seeing no one, we will move on to another highlight of the evening, and that is recognition of our reward schools by Mr. Tim Dean.
I really don't like this setup. We're supposed to address the board, but really it's about you all. I'm honored to be able to recognize two of our schools that have been awarded a reward school by the 2023 Department of Education. There's two things I admire a lot about people. One thing is somebody who's trying to get better every day. And then another thing I admire is somebody that's a high achiever and able to maintain it over long periods of time. And both of these schools hit one of those two criteria as far as I'm concerned today. Adams has had multiple years of this award, and Jefferson has too, but I think this is a first in a bit, maybe, at being recognized as, am I right, Chris? Being recognized. And it's interesting for us, and you know, the TCAP information is a hot topic amongst school boards everywhere, especially with the last few years. And to be honored to have two schools that have absolutely maxed out and achieved the highest level of a reward that you can get in the state of Tennessee is a real honor. So I'd like to ask Dr. Harrell and Dr. Potter from Adams and Jefferson to come up and receive the award on behalf of their folks and their kids. And I assume we want to take pictures over here? Absolutely. Is that right? Okay. Do you have some folks here? Some of your folks?
I would love them to come up. They're going to be real mad at me. Sorry, I called you out. You have to.
We can always fire them for them.
That includes you. Come on. Please.
Dr. Potter, is there anybody with you?
You want to bring your children?
I was standing there holding the door.
Okay, all right, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3.
Congratulations to both of those principals and their staff and all of their students, and what a tribute to the communities in which they exist. So hats off to you.
Okay, and with that, we're going to take just a very brief recess. If you're here and would like to go ahead and be dismissed, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, you're also welcome to stay for the rest of our business meeting. And we will begin that with business item 4.1, which is the approval of tenure recommendations by Mrs. Guthrie.
You all are thinking we just did this. So I do apologize occasionally. This is a very manual process, and inadvertently overlooked a couple of our very deserving teachers just in their year count. That 5 years within the last 7 can't have interims in the last 2 years. It can be a complex formula. So in any event, having said that, we do have 2 additional teachers that meet that criteria. So I want to present them to you for tenure, and that they have met those requirements of the years of service, as well as their level of effectiveness scores of 4 or 5 in the last 2 consecutive years. One of those is Miss Sarah Lovell at Dobbins-Bennett High School. She's here with us tonight. Yes.
Stand up, please. Well-earned recognition.
Yes. And Miss Carletta Fields of Jefferson, who is just with us. want to thank them very much for coming out and make sure that we do recognize them and present them to you all for tenure.
Okay. So the recommended action then is to approve the proposed candidates for tenure. Is any discussion on that? Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you both for everything you do. Thank you, thank you. And again, if you would like to exit, we will certainly understand if you would rather not hang in here. Okay, our next business item is item 4.2, budget amendment number 7, Mr. David Fry. David, we've missed you.
Good evening.
You didn't say you missed us.
Oh, I missed you.
You're going to get reacquainted tonight.
I brought my water with me. Okay, so the first item I have for your consideration is our 7th budget amendment of the year. Basically about 3 items on here. First item is, so you approved some donations earlier. One of the donations on there was a donation from the John Adams PTO for $120,000. This is to continue work on their playground. We've previously done some grading work, some fencing, and some mulch, added some mulch to their playground. This will be to pay for architect services and to fund some equipment that will go in the expanded area. So we'll be working on that. Another item, second item is another donation from Mr. and Mrs. Eadson. This is for $300,000, and this will fund fund alternate number 3 of the dome renovation project. That alternate was for the addition of some LED lighting that will be attached to the ceiling. The bid for alternate 3 was $272,000. And we will add a 4% contingency, to that for $10,880. And that will leave a balance in the $300,000 of $17,120. We've also been investigating an additional lighting feature to put in the dome that we have estimated at about $40,000. This will go towards the purchase of that. And we have some monies in the project currently that will cover the balance of that expenditure. So that is a $300,000 donation. The third item is an appropriation of our fund balance. In a minute, I'll have for you the consideration of bids for the re-roof of a portion of the Sullivan North facility. We received bids on that, and we're looking at replacing the roof over the gym area, the lobby, and the restrooms. That's one section. We're looking at replacing the roof over the vocational area, which is where TCAT currently operates. And there's a section between the two that join those two. It will not include the auditorium roof, but it includes where that, if you're familiar with, there's a hallway that goes from the TAC to the vocational area, and this is in that area. The total project cost for that is $1,116,274. The City of Kingsport is going to fund $275,000 of this project, which basically just about covers the cost of the vocational area where TCAT is located. There is some money that is currently in the North project that is available to be spent, $165,252. So that's going to require an additional $676,022 that we're recommending to be appropriated from our fund balance. We ended the year last year with a fund balance a little over $11.9 million. We've appropriated, there was $910,000 appropriated in the budget process. There were $459,871 of purchase orders that were carried forward that we used that fund balance to fund those. We also appropriated $1,729,895 to to partially fund the replacement of the HVAC systems in Johnson and Lincoln Elementaries. So that'll bring our fund balance down to a little over $8.8 million. And this appropriation will leave a balance in the fund balance account of $8,148,041, which is about 8.2% of our current year operating budget. So we're recommending that the $676,022 be appropriated from our fund balance. Also included in this, that was for our general purpose school fund budget, but then we account for all these projects in a general project fund on the city's books. And we're basically establishing a John Adams playground project for $120,000. We're adding to the Dobbins-Bennett Dome renovation project the $300,000, which will bring the funding in that project to $23,881,529. And we're also adding the $676,022 to the Sullivan North project, renovation project. And in addition, in that project, there's been some interest earnings on some monies, $47,012 that have never been appropriated. So I'm taking this opportunity to appropriate those interest earnings. These were monies that had been earned on bond funds, basically the bond funds that we received from Sullivan County a few years back. That is what I have on this budget amendment, and I'd recommend approval.
Questions for Mr. Fry?
I just want to say thank you to our donors. It's hard to shy away from that type of donation for any of our schools, but the donations to Adams and also to Dobbins-Bennett by generous community members is really how a lot of our projects get funded, and we can continue to be excellent. So just want to say thank you on behalf of the board for those generous donations, and the schools very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you saying that. And I don't think people inside our system and our culture don't understand how unusual this kind of giving culture really is amongst school systems. I remember being 22 years old and going and asking a group to buy basketball coaches a shirt that said such and such a basketball. 3 shirts, and they refused to do it. So $300,000 for LED. Every dime of it is incredibly generous regardless. PTOs, just on down the line. So it's always, I think it shows the difference we have here. And I really appreciate what everybody does, sincerely.
The Edison family's been very generous to our system. I've lost count how many times they've given money. I greatly appreciate that. And if we could get together some type of resolution or something just to thank them, I'd be happy to sign that. I think that'd be appropriate.
Sure. There have been some recognitions,
Okay.
but certainly I think that would be a very nice and small token of our thanks for them who have given much.
Yes.
We could do a proclamation like we
Yeah.
do, like city key or something, give them a proclamation and dedicate that day or something.
Give them a key to the high school.
Key to the high school. A key card that doesn't work. Anyway, but something like that, I think, just so they understand and the community knows, because a lot of times the recognitions are done more, at a sporting venue or something, but so the community understands that they give a lot. They may not want it because they do a lot under the table, but yeah, it's people like them and the people at Adams that make a difference in our schools.
And maybe in the grand opening, when we reopen the dome, we could do that.
This family is, they're very humble and probably have given in anonymity far more than what they've given publicly. And so Dr. Tater, I will be happy to engage them in that conversation. And their youngest is graduating this year, so it would be a very fitting opportunity to say thank you from our school system.
The oldest is graduating also, but from Alabama, so we'll let that slide, but yeah, no. No, I think that's a great idea. We'll try to make that happen. And again, thanks to all the generous donors. So the recommended action then is to approve budget amendment number 7 as presented. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we will move on to item 4.3, which is the approval to purchase student Chromebooks and Chrome licenses, and that's Mr. Andy Arnold and David Fry.
So it's that time again to make our annual purchase for our student one-to-one devices.
Time out. Sorry.
No timeout.
Potential spam. Sorry about that, Dave.
So we will be purchasing 2,000 Chromebooks and 1,000 licenses. We can repurpose some of the licenses, so we don't need to buy 2,000 licenses. The unit cost for these devices is $215, and the licenses are $32.30 a piece. The total cost is $462,300. This purchase will actually be made with our ESSER 3 funds. If you'll remember, a couple of months ago in a budget amendment, we had to kind of move some monies around to get the ESSER monies out of our Johnson and Lincoln projects, and so we kind of backfilled those projects with our general purpose money and slid this over into ESSER. So it'll be funded out of our general operating budget going forward, but for this year, it's going to be funded with ESSER 3 monies. We're buying this off of, as we have done before, a Wilson County Schools Cooperative Purchasing Agreement from Dale, from Dale through this cooperative agreement through Wilson County Schools. Recommend approval of this purchase.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Fry? Hearing none, the recommended action is to approve the purchase of 2,000 Chromebook 3110s and 1,000 Chrome licenses from Dell Marketing LP for a total cost of $462,300, utilizing the Wilson County Schools Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll move right along to the amended item, which is item 4.4, the approval to purchase.
So the original item that we
Yes.
had on here was to purchase 3 buses. Mistakenly, I thought we were purchasing 3 new buses, 3 additional buses, but they're actually replacement buses. And we're buying 1 special ed bus, and we are buying, not we, but us in the city are buying 3 buses. But the other 2 buses, the other 2 regular education buses are being purchased by the city's fleet maintenance department. Those buses were purchased back in 2008, 2009. We have paid depreciation on those buses into the fleet sinking fund. And so therefore, those 2 buses are going to be funded out of the city funds. So there will be resolutions going to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to purchase 3 buses. It's just that this board only needs to approve the purchase of the 1 special ed bus. And although it is a replacement, the bus that it's replacing was purchased with some grant funds, and this bus was never set up in the depreciation cycle. So we haven't paid into the fleet replacement fund for this bus. So we're funding this bus out of our operating budget. If you'll remember, we had $510,000 in our budget to purchase some additional buses. But I think at this time, the recommendation from our transportation department is to replace these 3 buses. That is what our needs are at this time. So this 43-passenger Bluebird bus that will be utilized by our special education department will be purchased through a Sourcewell cooperative agreement from Central States Bus Sales, and the cost is $182,027. We have these monies allocated in our general purpose school fund budget and would recommend the approval of this purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Depreciation, who knew? It's a good thing. So are there any questions for Mr. Fry regarding this purchase? Okay, and the recommended action is to approve the purchase of one 43-passenger bus for $182,027 using a State of Tennessee contract with Sourcewell. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. Get you a drink, Mr. of water. Okay, now we're moving on to 4.5.
So this item is the awarded bid for the replacement of the roof at the Tribe Athletic Complex, or the old Sullivan North facility. We advertised bids on January 24th, opened bids on February 22nd. As I stated before, there was a base bid, which was the roof over the TAC, and alternate one was the roof over the vocational area, and alternate two was the connecting area. There's a diagram in your materials that shows this. We all came out of this bid opening really happy because we got 6 bids for this project. We haven't had 6 bids on a project in forever. We're lucky to get 2. Sometimes just, but they were really kind of all over the place, sort of. I mean, our low bid for the base bid from Barnhart Roofing was $470,838 to a high bid of over $1 million. So sometimes that's an indication of, the contractor, yeah, they're going to put a bid in, but they really don't need the work. And maybe someone else really wants the work. So we were really happy with the prices on that. The base bid, as I said, was $470,838. Alternate one, which is the roof over the vocational area, was $283,473. And the other bid for the middle portion was $243,353. We're recommending that both alternates be accepted just because this is a really good price. We're not, I don't think, if we didn't take these alternates and we had to do this a year from now, I do not think we would get these prices. So we're recommending the base bid and both alternates, the total amount is $997,664. And actually, they also said they'd be completed in 120 days. So we're anticipating this project to be completed by Labor Day. So the architects have recommended that they've done their due diligence and looked at the bids and think that they're good bids. And so they've recommended that we accept the bid from Barnhart Roofing Company in total amount of $997,664. There are architect's fees associated with this project of $48,750. A contingency of 6% would be $59,860. And I've added in an extra $10,000 for some miscellaneous type expenses such as fire marshal inspection or fees and plan approval fees and some different things like that. For a total project cost of $1,116,274. So recommending that the board approve the low bid from Barnhart Roofing for $997,664 and authorize a 6% contingency for $59,860. And with the approval of the budget amendment earlier, the funds are in place in the Sullivan North renovation project for this.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Please. Just to help me understand, we've leaned a lot on our architects for a lot of our projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, this is what the architect recommends, help me understand the relationship between the architectural fee and their approval for somebody to come out and recommend the roof. You see what I'm saying? What does, I guess what I'm saying is, what do we need the architect to tell us, you know, that it's, do they just look at the monetary aspect? Do they get up there with them
Well,
and look at the project? How does that,
So the architect's involvement in the project, you know, it goes back to us, you know, initially engaging with them and then working with us to develop a scope for the project, putting together the specifications, all the drawings, all the shop drawings, and getting a bid package together, and then we put it out to bid. Then when they come back, and as far as what their recommendation is, they will go back to Barnhart Roofing and look at, and sit down with them and look at their numbers and make sure that they have bid what was specified. And so that we're going, that what you're approving is what was in their drawings, that they haven't left anything out.
Okay.
And so forth. So they earn 80% of their fee up through this phase. The other 20% of their fee is earned over the next 120 days or 150 days. I mean, you know, it's 120 days from when they get the notice to proceed, which won't be for another 3 or 4 weeks. But they will oversee the project. They will be on site, not every day, but they'll be on site. They'll see that the work is being done according to what was specified in the drawings, that everything's accurate, and the materials that they're using are the materials that were specified in the project. They will approve all the pay applications that come in for approval to make sure that those are all accurate. And then they'll do the final inspection to see that the job's been completed satisfactory, and along with us, and we'll go through the final walkthrough and the final punch list and all that sort of stuff. David Carper, David Sewell, I've been around a long time. And so that's what we're getting for what we're paying the architects.
So where is I know you mentioned an architect fee of
$48,750.
And is that included, is the $1,116,274?
That includes the architect fee.
All
that
three.
That includes the bid amount, that includes the 6% contingency,
Yes.
and that includes that additional $10,000
Okay.
for miscellaneous expenses.
Okay.
Yes, that's an all-in price.
Can I ask you a question? Do we typically pay the contractor? Well, let me back up first. So the architect's going to act as our agent, correct?
Yes.
Okay. They're not acting as a general contractor?
The contract, Barnhart Roofing
Is the general contractor on this? Okay. So then the architect will check off on the work and tell us to release funds to pay them? Is that how? Okay. How much do we pay up front? So for the project, like we're going to allocate the money, it's going to go into an account. Does the city then issue a check for, like, you know, the purchase of the shingle? Yeah, is it half?
No.
That's what I'm asking.
No.
They issue no money at all?
No.
So they do this $120 on their own dime?
So when we get, you know, there'll be monthly pay applications that come in.
Okay.
That will show the amount of work, the materials that have been purchased, the amount of work that's been done. And that's what the architect will sign off on. They'll sign off on, yes, they've ordered these materials, they're on site. Yes, they've done 20% of this job. So you owe them 20% of their labor. You owe them this for these materials. And then they sign off on that, and then we pay the contractor.
Do we have that contract with the architect? Did we already?
Yes.
Okay. Could you just send me a copy of it?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that.
It's probably in board docs.
I can just get a copy, it's fine.
So, yeah, we can get that. The other thing that we do with the contractor, with all contracts, all construction contracts, is we also withhold 5% retainage. So let's say that they go through this and they've earned $200,000 the first month. So we'll get a pay app for him for $200,000. Well, we'll withhold $10,000 of that $200,000. And that's state law. That's the way things are done. And we have to invest that money in an interest-bearing account. It's routine practice for the city. And then at the end of the project, once we may actually pay a next to final pay app that shows 100% complete, but there's actually some punch list items, some minor things that have to be completed, that okay, well, we've seen something's bent here or something, if it's a paint thing, which is probably not in this job, but come back and we won't release that retainage until that final punch list is completed.
Okay.
So not only do we not pay them up front, we don't pay them everything when they earn it.
Sure. So is that expected, like at the end of 120 days, then 100% the punch list, everything will be completed, or is it just the bulk of the work and then there's a final walkthrough?
So substantial completion, the 120 days would be substantial completion.
Okay.
Which would not be final completion. Generally, the substantial completion is kind of like you're at the point where, yeah, it's all done, but we've gone through, we've checked everything, and here's 15 items that still need to be corrected.
But you can occupy the building.
Yes, generally at substantial completion, we'll get our certificate of occupancy.
So, yeah, because
And in this situation, I don't know that a CO, certificate of occupancy, is really concerned in this situation because it's a roof project and not a interior renovation project.
Right. You still got to pull a permit though for that.
Yes.
So if the city is the one inspecting the roof, and they issue a certificate, but then we find issue that this didn't actually pass inspection and there was stuff missing, does that come back to the city to point out their inspection was deficient, or does that fall to the contractor, or does that fall to the agent, or does that fall to us?
Well, generally there'll be a city inspection by city inspectors and the architect will review it along with our staff and everyone will agree that everything's complete. And then generally, if anything comes up after that, it'll be a warranty issue.
Okay. So it goes back to the contractor.
Yeah, and we have there'll be a year warranty on these types of things.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And sending the contract's going to be a whole lot easier. I just tried to see if I could find it, and it just says contract signed, so we'd have to open up every single document to find which one it was.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get that to you.
We done business with this company before. I don't recall the name.
If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to, I do know that they did the roof on Westridge. And David Sewell talked to the Sullivan County Maintenance Director and said they did a good job on the school, and so we've done a little bit of background work to it.
Okay, excellent conversation. Thank you, Mr. Fry. Okay, if there are no other questions, then the recommended action is to enter into an agreement with Bernard Roofing Company Incorporated for the Tribe Athletic Complex re-roof for a total cost of $997,664, authorizing a 6% contingency of $59,860, an architect fee of $48,750, and a $10,000 miscellaneous amount for a total of $1,116,274. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Last but not least,
Okay.
item 4.6.
So this item is to amend the contract with Preston Construction Company. We initially approved an agreement for $20,404,085. We amended the contract once when we put in alternate number 5, which brought the total contract, which increased it by, it brought the total to $20,548,585. This amendment is to add alternate 3 in the cost of $272,000, which will bring the total contract cost to $20,820,585. So we're recommending that the board approve Amendment 2 to the Preston Construction contract to add alternate 3 for LED lighting in an amount of $272,000 and increase the 4% contingency by $10,880.
Okay, any questions?
Just generally curious. So the thing we just approved on the acceptance of the donation is kind of what we're talking about here,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So from an accounting perspective, how does that work? You know, that you receive the funds and you just it's just an accounting transfer into this general
Well,
dome?
we have a project set up on the books, this general project fund, which you amended in your budget amendment, this general project. We have a project set up that is funded in the amount of, the construction contract right now is at $20.5 million. But there's more monies in there. I mean, we've got the money for towers, construction, for the scaffolding that's in place. We've got, you know, it's several other items in there. So, and you amended the total cost of that project by adding the $300,000 to it. So the bond monies that the city sold, this $300,000 donation that is there, all go into this project. And those monies are sitting there available. And when we get the pay applications in from the contractor and the architect, Thompson Litton, authorizes those pay applications, then we'll draw down that money and pay on that.
So I should know this, but forgive me for not knowing definitively. So is it the same architectural company and representative that we just talked about?
No,
It's a different,
no, CRW, Kane Rash West.
is that bid out? How's that? I don't recall how that happens.
On the dome project, and generally, architect services are not bid out. Those are something by state law that you
Don't
can,
have
it's
to.
a professional service that
Yeah.
you do not have to bid out. We had worked with Kane Rash West on the re-roof of the TAC.
Right.
Because they're the ones who did the architect work for the renovation of the TAC. And they also were the
Makes
ones
sense, yeah.
that we did a request for proposal for on the Sullivan North renovation when we were going to renovate that for Johnsonville Middle School. So CRW was already familiar with that building. And as a matter of fact, their rate for the re-roof of this was not the standard 6%. It was more in the neighborhood of 3% because they had already done substantial work when they did the design for the renovation into Johnsonville Middle School. Thompson and Litton, who is the architect on the dome renovation project, we also did a request for proposal or request for qualification, whatever you want to call it, several years ago for the renovation of Dobbins Bennett as a whole. And so since they were already familiar with doing that and already had done work on that facility, we engaged them to be the architect for the dome renovation.
So essentially on all our, so we've talked privately in the olden day when we had like, what was it called, an owner's representative
Yes,
that reported directly to us all the time?
Right.
We don't, essentially the architects play that role now?
They do. They do.
And we had a, you know, again, $23 million is a lot to not feel like you got your fingers on the pulse of as sitting in here. But I know, I feel confident that you all, our staff does. I just, the communication process, I don't know how you do it. I mean, we had an update last
Right.
meeting, right? And that was the first one since
Since it was approved.
it started, right? And so I'm just curious about I don't feel like I know what's going on enough to approve $23 million and
So the other thing that in.
yeah, it's already done,
The
yeah.
other thing in this project is that we are engaging with the city of Kingsport's engineering department. And they have, so at all of our, I mean, we have a walkthrough every other week, and then every other week, we have a progress meeting. So we're on site at the.
But don't get me wrong, I have total
every
confidence
week.
in that. I don't have any lack of confidence in that. What I am concerned about is the transfer of information to this board on that. And I don't know what that looks like. I couldn't draw it up, but I'm just talking about a visceral reaction to staying on top of projects that are $23 million versus $20,000.
Well, I know Dr. True does update on some, is that monthly that you do your video recorded that comes through in the newsletter? So that's one option in addition to, and I don't know how often it has been slated for an update. I would imagine about every 2 to 3 months for this board in a work session. But I think he gives a fairly broad.
I agree.
But it's available information, not
Right.
only for us, but for the entire community.
Right, right. Am I the only one, I may be the only one that kind of feels a little bit of pressure on the $23 million spend and not knowing 100% kind of where we are from day to day or month to month or meeting to meeting?
To speak to that, I think when we did, nobody was here. When we did the renovation, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to remember. We did the renovation for DB and the add-on, the addition, that was 20 million.
Science technology was a little over $20 million.
Yeah, we did have pretty regular updates. I'm trying to remember. I thought it was at least monthly though, but that was a little.
I'd have to look back. I don't think it was monthly. I think it was every 2 or 3 months.
When we talked about that, when we asked for updates on the Dome project, it was every other month.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we asked for
Okay.
Lytton as well.
Are
to
we-
have- To have an every other month.
Are we able to go down and just walk in and, as long as we're not, stepping on people and hard hats on? Yeah, no, I'm not trying to piss off OSHA, but like if we go down and wanted to see some of this stuff, would that be, do we need to make an appointment or?
I would think that you might want to arrange a time to come in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
all
I mean, there's a job superintendent from Preston Construction that's on site every day. But the architect is not on site every day. But although they are engaged in the project, I can assure you every day. And the city of Kingsport and their engineering department. We did the same thing with the Science and Technology building, is that we had a representative in the city's engineering department that was there and overlooking just another set of eyes. They essentially were working as our owner's rep that we actually employed 15, 20 years ago when we built Washington. This is how far I go back. When we built Washington, when we built Adams,
So who acts as the final say-so then? If there's that many cooks in the kitchen, who's the one that says, nope, you got to redo that, or yep, that looks good?
I think it's a team effort. I mean, when you say final, I mean, Hank Clayball, the city engineer, signs off on a lot of stuff. The architects, they sign off on things. I know that they're in constant communication with us. I mean, I bet you I've seen 15 emails in the last 4 or 5 days about the floor.
But the architect is the one that acts as the agent to say, go ahead and release the checks and pay the contractor?
Yes, in addition to that, the architect signs off on the pay application, and then that gets sent to Hank Clayball, and he has to sign off on it. And then after he signs off on it, I'll sign off on it. So it's a multi-layered. And then once all of us sign off of it, then the city manager has to sign off on it.
Because of the amount?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's just the way that that's the procedures that are in place for City of Kingsport construction projects.
And I think maybe this has been mentioned, but the same supervising foreman who was responsible for the work at the TAC is also here at the Dome now.
Yeah, Joe did the TAC.
And he does an amazing job.
He does a good job.
He does, yeah.
He
So
went- he
that
did-
gives me confidence knowing what he did at the TAC and the amount of time he did it and with the excellence in which it was done. Just having a history there, a very recent history.
Understand. And I don't have any lack of confidence in anybody from David through somebody hammering nails over there, if they do still do such a thing. It's just it's understanding and the information coming to the people that put their necks on the line, like the people did a couple weeks ago, raising their hand saying they're willing to serve. and they're willing to step up and take responsibility for things like that. And then I think, need to give them the professional courtesy to let them know what they're voting, what their vote has led to with expenditures of millions and millions of taxpayer dollars. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't have any lack of confidence in, we're so lucky from who we are as a rep. That's not the point. It's almost an administrative question I have more than anything. I just don't feel like, I don't think as a board representative, I should have to go look and ask and pursue like I'm an owner's contract representative, or any of you all should. I mean, I'm out in August, so, but you understand my point, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's just, I wouldn't know what I was looking at anyway.
And that's why we asked for the updates like every other month, because I think they talked about monthly, kind of like they started with the STEM building was a monthly thing. But then we wouldn't get much done in our work sessions because it would always, so that's why they moved it to every other month. And to try to give us the confidence so when we are out in public, we can answer the questions. We do have Dr. True's updates. We have that thing, and anybody that logs on to K12K can see the updates on what's going on with the dome, so they can sort of see that. But I think the general population isn't going to know all the nitty-gritty details either, unless they're architects, engineers, or electricians, or some special force. So I think based on that, it does give us some credibility as to where the dollars are being spent. We do have videos and updates so people can look at it if they want. And they're welcome to come and ask us questions if, they're confused, and we'll gladly point them back to Mr. Fry. His number is.
Okay, any other questions or discussions? Very good dialogue, very good dialogue. Okay, then the recommended action is to approve amendment number 2 to the agreement with Preston Construction to add alternate number 3 for additional LED ceiling lighting in the amount of $272,000, and to increase the contingency by 4% of the alternate amount, which is $10,880. That's a total of $282,880. Is there a motion for approval?
Since I don't want to give money back, I definitely motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fry.
There's some savings in that with the LED. I remember there's going to be some power savings in that. Yeah, with the LED lighting.
Well, this isn't just lighting. This is lighting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's going to be
But you're correct. I mean,
spectacular. If you've been to a
Picture
University of Tennessee
the
game.
Chicago Bulls.
It's-
The white lighting in the star,
It's incredible.
those are being replaced as part of the base contract.
Right,
And so
right.
that will be new LED lighting there.
So this is like shine a player's picture down on the floor.
Oh, okay.
And flames on the, like, on the
Do we need
floor.
to put a disclaimer for those who are photosensitive?
It's going to be pretty incredible. It's going to be, it's an amazing venue for our students. Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Fry. We do appreciate it. And so we'll continue on. Since we're not having a work session, we're going to have a report from Mr. Fry, a quarterly financial report. So go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead and lead on.
So have your second quarter financial update. This is as of December 31st. I think you're basically aware of some of the issues that we're facing in this current year budget. Nothing's really changed a whole lot since I gave you the first quarter update. We are just continuing to receive our amount of money that were allocated from the state in our TISA funds. One thing that is new since your first update is that we have received our first payment for the outcomes funding. So our allocation, our initial allocation, didn't include any of the outcomes funding. But we have received our first payment of that. There is a second and third payment, which I would think would be much, much smaller than this $744,310 outcomes payment that we received back in early January. So I think, I quite honestly was thinking that the amount of money was going to come in at $300,000 to $400,000 and to come in at $750,000. Now, we are not recommending any expenditure of these funds at this time, just in light of where we are with our other revenue sources. This will go toward maybe offsetting some of those or some other expenditures that we may propose in the future. So that was a real pleasant surprise. Again, going down to our county revenue and our property taxes, we know that both Hawkins and Sullivan County decreased their property tax rates when they approved their budgets this past year, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 cents on the tax rate, which negatively affects our revenue. We'd already approved our budget at that point and weren't anticipating that type of decrease in property tax rate. So we could be as much as about $3.3 million short in property taxes. Our total property tax estimate for the year is $18.3 million. So we could be, it may come in at 15 million. That'd be 3.3 less. Now, I think maybe it may not be as short as what the initial estimate was, but it's still too early to tell at this point. Probably 75% of the people in the counties paid their property taxes within the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we'll continue to monitor that. We did a couple of weeks ago. This was after December 31st, but we did a couple of weeks ago receive from the state the ADA percentages where we split county funds between the different school systems that are within the county. So in Hawkins County, there's Rogersville City Schools, there's Kingsport City Schools, and there's Hawkins County Schools. And of course in Sullivan, there's Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City, and Sullivan County. Our ADA percentage went down. Our student enrollment went down this year. Hawkins or Sullivan counties went way down. It went down more than ours. Their ADA, their number of students in Sullivan County is about 40% of the total students in Sullivan County. Ours is in the neighborhood of about 36 to 37%. Trend continues the way it's been going for the last 10 years. It won't be, but in maybe 5 years or so, Kingsport City Schools might actually have more students than Sullivan County Schools. I can remember about 10 or 12 years ago when Sullivan County Schools dropped below 50% of the total number of students in Sullivan County, and now they're down to about 40%. So we are seeing a decrease in our ADA percentage in Sullivan County. On the other hand, our increase in our ADA percentage in Hawkins County went up. Now we share a much smaller percentage. We have about 8% of the students in Hawkins County. But overall, it's going to negatively affect our revenue for the year. On property taxes, I'm estimating about $50,000, which is nothing compared to the $3.3 million, but some information for you.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
We approved the budget in April, May, June
We approved
for
the budget in May.
fiscal year 25 for next year.
We will approve it at your May board meeting.
And when do the county governments approve their budgets?
Well, they used to do.
Or adjust their tax rates?
They used to not approve their budgets until August.
Okay.
But now, they have been approving it lately by June 30th. But when we approve ours in May, and then we hear that they're going to reduce their property taxes, we've already set our budget.
So, is there a way that we can adjust our I don't guess so, but, I mean, our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30, correct?
Yes.
I mean, but there's nothing we can do with our approvals or anything like that that could somehow, in an effort to adjust to that tax rate increase or drop, that we could do our
Well,
budget afterwards.
And there's not a whole lot of discussion in the county about what they're going to do with their budget until we've already approved our budget. So that's part of the issue, is that it's not even being talked about until after our budget's approved. We really can't wait any later to approve our budget, because we have to present our budget to the city board of mayor and aldermen. And they have some legal limitations where they have to advertise some things in the paper and do things like that. So we have to present our budget to them by about mid-May. And then they will approve their budget, which includes ours, at their 2 meetings in June. And then, I don't know when the county commission approved their budget last year, but it was probably toward the very tail end of June.
It was. I'm pretty sure it was its very end.
Quality
I
governance.
actually went to that meeting and spoke on behalf.
Right.
But
That's right.
it didn't do any good.
So when concern was voiced, did we not receive feedback like, well, we're anticipating sales tax make up the difference, a growth in sales tax, which,
I think there was some indication of that.
yeah, and that's not turned out to be true.
And we didn't budget a 15 or 20% increase in sales tax. We budgeted a 3% increase in sales tax. So speaking of sales tax, we actually, as of December 31st, have collected 50.5% of what we collect for the year, which the holiday sales have not come in at that point. So, yeah, no, they lag behind. They lag behind. So that's 109,000 more than we collected at that time last year. And it's about a 1.5% increase over what we had collected at that time last year. So I do think that we will come pretty close to our sales tax estimate. I think we're going to pretty much hit that. It's still pretty early to tell, but I don't see that we're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars short in our sales tax. But I mean, I've told the board in the last 2 to 3 years that the economy is just not going to be able to sustain a 10 to 15 to 18% growth in sales tax year after year after year, and it stopped this year. So, tuition students, it appears that we're going to be a little bit short in our tuition revenue, although Mr. Nash and some folks in my office have been really looking closely at tuition, and we think we've found a little bit in there that we're lacking on that. So we may be picking up a little bit in our tuition collections. Our early childhood fees. This has been an area of concern for the past year or two. The budget for our early childhood programs this year, we budgeted about $150,000, $170,000 deficit in that program. Right now, as of December 31st, we're running about a $57,000 deficit. I would expect that number to double by the end of the year. If it's $57,000 in the first 6 months, it's probably going to be another $57,000 in the next 6 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year we're $120,000 to $125,000, $130,000 deficit in that program.
What's the main cause? What's the main cause?
Main cause is it's just that, you know, with wages that we've increased due to needing to increase wages based upon 15% inflation, and paying our people a decent wage and being competitive with the other daycare centers. One of the things I can tell you that is a little bit, hurts us a little bit, is that almost all of our employees in our early childhood programs are full-time employees. which makes them eligible for benefits, which makes them eligible for our retirement benefits, which makes them eligible for health insurance benefits, which both of those are expensive. Some other daycare centers, they may not employ but a handful of full-time employees, and the rest of their employees might be part-time. And in being part-time, they don't have to provide health insurance. Even if they're full-time, they don't have to provide retirement. But we provide retirement to our employees because they're Kingsport City Schools, they're City of Kingsport employees, and all of our full-time employees have retirement offered to them. So I can tell you that that's a big burden on our programs. If we didn't have to offer health insurance or have to offer retirement, we'd be fine.
So that $57,000 currently, that's full freight allocation
Yes.
towards, okay.
Yes.
How many children roughly are in that program?
I didn't bring those numbers with me, but I'm going to say roughly about 150.
150. So we'd have to increase tuition.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about in this setting tonight, because our early childhood programs have not announced what their tuition rates are going to be for next year. And it is time for them to do that. They usually have done it before this, but it's time for them to do that so that parents can start making plans of, are you going to be in our program? Are you going to go someplace else for these services? And, you know, we really can't wait much later. And I know this is a report, this is not a voting item, but what we're going to propose is that we raise our tuition, our fees for our early childhood programs by 10%. So if we have a charge of $740 or $840 for the year, we're looking at increasing that by 10%.
So how many months is that we run this program?
Well, we run the early childhood programs, we run them 12 months. Not all children attend 12 months. I mean, we have a number of teachers' children in these programs, and they don't need services during the summer. But we also don't employ all of our workers 12 months.
But as far as people can make payments on a monthly basis?
Oh, yes,
for the
they do. They make
Okay.
payments on a monthly basis.
So annualized, this would be roughly an $83 per month increase?
Yeah, about $80, $85. And it depends. I mean, we have different levels of prices in there too. I mean, we have prices for infants, for toddlers, and for preschool.
Okay.
With the smaller kids being the more expensive because their class size ratios are small.
But we haven't raised this rate in how long?
Oh, we've raised it.
But when was the last time we raised it?
I'm not sure if we raised it this year, but I think we raised it the year before.
Okay, so it's been a couple years since we've raised it, and do you remember what the percentage was to raise it then?
It probably, I don't know if it was a percentage or a flat dollar amount, but it wouldn't have been any more than 5%.
Okay.
3% stick in my brain, because I know we went through the numbers then. And then last year, because we've asked this question before, but last year, we got the information out too late by the time we realized where we needed to be on salaries. So we just agreed last year to kind of eat it and then go back and try to capitalize. We're still trying to be competitive. We are not the cheapest, but we're by far not the most expensive. Childcare, and childcare is hard to get in this area, but we want to provide something decent. So they had talked in the past to try to close that gap a little bit.
Right. This is more for the viewing public. I remember we did all this, but not everyone was watching.
You can go back and watch.
If we do, so if it was at 3% and then we missed it for 2 years, so 3.
1 year.
Well, right, but this will be the second year. So let's just say if we didn't raise it last year and had we raised it 3% and then 3% this year, we would have been off by 4%, which tracks with inflation, right? So it's roughly a 2% year over year for the last 2 years that we're missing it by. So this is not out of the ordinary considering the inflationary
No, I
increase.
don't think so. I
Okay,
don't think so.
yeah.
I don't think so.
Do we have a waiting list? Do we have a waiting list for children? I mean, yes.
I think we do. I think we have a waiting
Yes,
list.
I
mean, we're
looked
full.
for some families.
I can't bite my tongue on this any longer. Just stop for a second and think about the depth of understanding on $57,000 we're talking about. And I was begging for information about what's going on with 23 million, not from you, David, I don't mean it. I look at you, but I don't mean it like, for $23 million. Do you understand my frustration on that?
We got you.
I don't know if y'all feel it. I can't read you. Honestly, I can't tell how you feel about this. But it makes me crazy. I don't think there's anything any more important hardly than we do than this right here. And, you know, I've said it before. I just still remember taking my oldest boy to Waverly Road and crying all afternoon and calling my wife and saying, I can't do this, you're gonna have to take him. And when I got comfortable with the fact that they loved on him and they took care of him, I cried when he left, when he had to go to school. So that's what it means to people's lives. We talk about it like it's a widget or something, or you know, it's an LED light in the dome. Do you see my frustration on it? I feel like I'm the only one that feels this.
And sadly, I mean, Waverly Road, that's funny you mentioned that because that's where my kids went, and we had to be, we were the acting director, my husband and I were for a little bit, and 95% of the tuition goes towards salaries. And at the time, those teachers weren't making much of it. I mean, you couldn't survive on that salary as if you were supporting a family, but it is almost like a mission. You know, you're providing a good outreach for those kids, a safe environment for kids to go to, a place for teachers to put their children in a safe environment so they can come and educate everybody else's kids. So yeah, it is sad that we lose that much money, especially when we have waiting lists, but it is almost the mission of Kingsport City Schools to provide that. And you're right, it is the most important thing. And I remember somebody, when they were ready to shut down Waverly Road years ago, somebody said the hardest day, they cried the first day they left their child, and they cried even harder the last day they left there. And you kind of get it because they become your family.
I understand. Thank you. And you're right. We employ incredible people, and so it costs a lot of money. That's your number one. In any business, is your number one expense is the people, because they make the difference here. I understand what you're. I get. We'll sit here and chase $100,000, and yet 20 million seems like yeah. No,
There's too many zeros.
just. Here's this like.
Well, and let me add that I mean, this, for the sake of a board meeting, there's an efficient report that we feel the responsibility to bring to you. We've labored over this conversation for months and hours within each month. We've met with the faculties at each of our sites repeatedly. We've met with the directors. We've crunched the numbers. We've looked at a one-year plan, a potential three-year plan. We've looked every which way, but the majority of our school system is funded by state and federal dollars, not intended for private use. And this is a private service to the community, and we have to be able to fund it accordingly.
That's a good point.
But a very valuable service, extremely valuable service. And I think surely that the fact that we pay, we have retirement opportunities and retirement fund opportunities and insurance, that we are recruiting top-notch people who stay with us.
Well, that was what I was getting ready to say, is that a lot of our people stay with us. I mean, if we were to go back and say, okay, well, we're gonna phase out our full-time employees in this program and just hire part-time people in this program, the turnover and the would just be, I mean, a child would see five, I don't want to say five, but three people during the same year, instead of seeing one person for the 3 or 4 years that they're there.
I appreciate it. Like I said, I know I'm looking at you, and I don't mean it like anything like that. I appreciate everybody and everything they do.
You're used to that.
Ain't your first rodeo.
I behave similarly sometimes in our cabinet meetings. This is not, red faces are not abnormal in our private conversations either.
Yeah. So we're working on that deficit, and one of the things that we're doing to work on is that, because we don't have a lot of other choices, is to bring in more revenue through a rate increase. So I think that there will be probably next week going out to parents in this program that what the rates are going to be for next year, and they're going to be increased by 10%.
Could I make one suggestion? If we were to do a little less than and even cover some of the costs this year and then do some next year. Do you see what I'm saying? Hopefully the inflation calms down and, November, we don't know what's going to happen. So it would just be, I know everyone is getting hammered on costs. If we could come up with a couple like Plan A, Plan B, Plan C or something, where maybe we cover a little bit of it from general and then.
Well, we need to publicize what those numbers are going to be soon. So, if you're more comfortable in saying, let's increase it 7.5%.
Do you know why there's been a delay in the release of that tuition?
Just kind of having this conversation and having.
We don't vote on it.
No,
Right.
but I'm kind of looking for you to shake your head a little bit up and down or back and forth.
You would ask about it if we didn't bring it up, because you'll hear about it.
Yeah, so, and just your suggestion, maybe not 10%, maybe a little bit less. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
10% is a lot.
It is.
I mean, I'm just thinking about families. When I was looking for another family member for 2 children, I nearly choked.
But one thing you need to look at too is that if we're, and I don't know what kind of pay raise that we're going to recommend to the board here in another month or so, but let's just say that we were looking at doing a 3% cost of living, and then they get step increases, and they don't get a 2% step. These employees don't get the 2% step increases that other classified employees get. They get a smaller percentage. But when you look at a 3% cost of living, well, there's 3% of the 10% right there. I mean, it takes 3, 4, 5% increase just to keep up with our increased cost. So if we're gonna do anything toward the deficit, I got to do a little bit more than that. So I mean, if you're more comfortable with I'm splitting the difference between 5 and 10. If you're more comfortable with that, we can do that. Then we have our after-school programs. They're running a surplus. Those are more money-making than they are than the other programs. They're not a early childhood program. They're after-school programs. The ratios aren't near what they are in our early childhood programs. So we actually do make money on those programs. Again, I don't have a whole lot to, there's not a whole lot in this update that's new from that we talked about earlier. On our expenditure side, we're not spending a couple of $1 million in capital expenses that we had anticipated spending. I mean, we set aside some money for some one-time expenditures that we were going to spend because our ESSER money's going off, and we got some recurring expenses that we're paying for with ESSER monies. So we were going to pick those up next year with some of the TISA money that we kind of reserved to spend on one-time things this year. But in light of the county revenue situation, we haven't spent that money. So we've got a couple of $1 million worth of capital expenditures that we've not spent just because we don't want to end the year up $3 million in the hole. We're hoping that we can break even. Now, this is not, we got to deal with next year because we don't, that we won't. We're just going to be next year. The 24-25 budget is going to be a little bit difficult budget to deal with, but we'll deal with it. So that's really all I've got as far as the financial update's concerned. If you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Fun evening for you, huh?
Yes, sir.
Seriously, I said it last time I talked to Jeff Hall, your name came up, and I said, I don't know what David's retirement plans are, but he's going to have to work his way around me in the process. So I sincerely have known you for decades, literally, and I appreciate everything you've done through that whole time. And you're invaluable as far as I'm concerned, even though I was looking at you.
Thank you very much.
So,
and I do see a little bit of light at the end of the
So is there a direction that we need to, is there a change in direction that we would need to offer to Mr. Fry about the,
just kind of feedback
on the
increase.
rate increase?
I'm a lot more comfortable with set, like you just splitting the difference myself, but I prefer nothing, but I understand inflation's crazy and everything costs more, and I just don't want to, I'm a realist, and I see the people. I'm a very empathic person, and it makes me a little crazy. It worries me, but I understand the need from a business perspective. I really do. But is like you were saying, if we could somehow kind of ease it up a little bit more.
Maybe splitting
your
might be
point
a
about
better option.
budgeting, you know, these people are budgeting just like we're trying to budget before we know how much money we're going to have, right? So that's why we have to get this information out.
Well, and, you know, I agree with Todd, you know, even though there's been a year or two that we didn't raise anything, that same $75 a month, $80 a month doesn't buy what it did 2 years ago. So to all of a sudden get hit with that at one time, you know, I mean, you're talking about a trip to the grocery store for some people. So
Maybe a split might be a better option, and look at some type of additional amount next year.
I mean, what are you guys saying, a split? We talked 10%, we talked 4%, are we talking 7% split? You know, in between what we need to have to cover our cost and then what we really should have to help close the gap?
Well, when I talked about splitting the difference, what I've been working with for the past 2 or 3 months and talking with folks is, are we going to do it 5% or are we going to do it 10%? So when I say split the difference in my mind, I'm sitting here at 7.5.
I'm good with that.
So the 10% number is the assumption that it assuages all the financial concerns of the program?
No, it does not.
I didn't think so.
It does not. We'd have to do a 10% increase over a 3 or 4 year period every year. So so another thing I've kind of looked at and we talked about a little bit is there something that the board would be willing to say that, okay, we're going to fund this portion of this. The retirement benefit, we'll fund the retirement benefit, or we'll fund half of the health insurance benefit. We'll, you know, on an annual basis, you know, you consider this being picked up by the system. And you don't have to worry about covering that cost. Are you going to cover it? We have 3 directors in the programs that, you know, are the directors, and they're not necessarily the day-to-day daycare providers. Would the system fund 50% of those salaries? We pay them teacher salaries. Now, they work 12 months for that 10-month teacher salary, these 3 individuals. But would the board be willing to say, we'll pick up a portion of their salaries?
I'd love to see like a numbers report on options like that. It's kind of what you were saying too. I mean, you know, saying that, I don't know what that means, you know, from dollar perspective.
Well, I mean, when I say that we pay them teacher salaries, I mean, when we add a new teacher to the budget, we add $75,000 to the budget.
Right.
So if you take 3 teacher salaries,
Yeah.
you know, that's $225,000.
Just did that right off the top of your head. Didn't even use your finger.
He's a walking computer.
So, you know, would the board be willing to fund, you know, 50% of those or 75 or 100% of those salaries, you know, $120,000, you know, you know.
And maybe bring options to us so we can see, because, you know, you hate to see any program that's constantly losing money. I mean, that's just, but we also know it's a mission. You know, without this, a lot of parents can't work. But we're not the only daycare going up in cost. A lot of them are going up significantly because food costs have increased so much, and just general wet wipes and other things that daycares need, they're all increasing. So it's not just wages at daycares. And some of the 3-star rating daycares have had long-term employees for a very long time. They're not having turnover either. But I think we need to look to see what can we do to say, okay, these are our sunk costs regardless, and these are really our true costs, you know, to have 10 teachers or to, you know, have whatever, you know, we're going to cover half their life, which is going to cost this much. But I think we need to see schematics on what they each mean, and then we can make an educated decision. I mean, for us to say right now, yeah, let's pay half their medical, well, we don't know what that means. And I think we really need to look at all of them and analyze them.
As Mr. Fry said, parents need to make arrangements. What I'd like for us to do, if I feel like what we will do, we have a meeting on Thursday, it will provide an opportunity to talk about a range. We've talked about 10, we've talked about 7.5, 5 was mentioned. We might even look at a flat rate to see what a flat rate might bring us over a period of time, and then come back and see what the deficit is and where the board might desire to pick up that deficit.
Yeah, I mean, just rough math, a $50 per month increase, and the board picks up 30 or whatever, that's a $54,000, roughly back of the napkin. This is a $107 million school system, right? So we're sitting here quibbling over just a little bit. I just want to stair step into it. Yeah, I want to stair step into it.
And let me add too that it has been the philosophy of previous boards that this program incurred no debt. I mean, that has been and so I believe the actions have been based on the history of boards feeling fiduciary responsibility to that. I'm certainly not arguing against it, just making the point that over time we've gone from no debt to, we'll push $130,000 in debt. And so I think it's important to have that awareness.
I just wanted to ease folks in, knowing that they got these, hopefully stuff calms down the next couple of years and we'll keep raising it and then we can get back to zero. But if we eat $50,000 for 1 year to ease it up on the parents' side, because they're not in there the whole time. It's like they usually have these kids in there, 2-3 years at the most? So
Some are there from birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but I mean, we got a waiting list.
You also have to consider, I mean, there's not a whole lot of like 3-star programs and accredited childcare programs.
Is 3-star the highest? I apologize, I don't know
Yeah,
the
3
starring
stars the
system
highest,
here.
the state rating.
Yeah.
So there's not very many in the area. So parents are paying for the quality of education that these kids are getting as 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds.
Sure.
And we can't discount that, when we're going out, because there's some child care centers that have worked really hard to be a 3-star, and they're getting tuition as well. So I don't want to just be, giving our quality education away and diluting that, because it's worth something. I'm going to pay a premium over a Cadillac, which actually probably not, they don't run very well, versus, a Fiat or something, and so we can't really compare. We have to make sure, and I get 10% is a lot for people, especially, as, Dr. Fletcher said, groceries are really expensive, and we are feeding our kids, and some of that is coming from our nutrition program, which, helps, but, I think we had to.
So we do not provide meals.
We don't provide food?
No.
Oh, so maybe if it was a flat rate, if you could maybe look at that, like the $50, I think maybe that would be more palatable.
Have we beaten this enough for you? Like, you get it? I think we've.
We trust you to do something along that line, would be great.
Well, we'll talk internally and Dr. Hamilton can update the board and.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, well, just a couple things before we are adjourned. I did want to provide an update on a couple of legislative items that we talked about before. The work-based learning legislation that increases allowable credits from 3 to 6 has actually been passed and signed by the governor, so that's a plus. The alternate math pathways for Algebra 2 has passed both the House and the Senate, and it's on the governor's desk for his signature. So those are 2 pieces of legislation that really benefit us. So just wanted to pass that along. I just got that information right before the meeting.
Didn't vouchers make it through the committee?
It made it through Senate, but it hasn't gotten through the House. And
Okay, I thought it just got through committee. It's already through the Senate then?
no, just the House has not passed the House, and they're obviously very, very different. And I don't think
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Senate committee.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's still in committee. It just got out of one committee. It's going to the next.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So there's lots of discussion. So I'll be interested to hear hear how this week unfolds, but,
And we'll echo to Ms. Woods' point on the two bills that passed. The chamber, Kingsport Chamber, and specifically Dr. Cinnamon served on a cabinet advising these two bills. And we've tried for many years, probably 5 years, to elevate these to recognition. And Representative Hicks was a staunch advocate, and I know that Ms. Barnett with the Chamber and Dr. Cinnamon have traveled to Nashville a couple of times and really advocated on behalf of these opportunities for our students, and it appears that it sailed through. Like it was.
and the Senate side also, which I think Lundberg had sponsored it on.
Sometimes you just need the right people, and very much looking forward to the impact this will have on our students and their futures.
Yeah, just thanks to, I know there was a lot of work that went into those conversations so that it could just sail through. Nothing just sails through, so there was a lot of work on the front end. So thank you to all those people. Okay, well, this is not as long as our last meeting, but I think we are ready to be adjourned. If there's nothing else, if no one else has anything, we will meet again for our regular monthly meeting on April 9th at 6 o'clock for our business meeting, and then the work session will be on April 23rd at 6 p.m. as well. And with that, we are adjourned. Roll Tribe.